Hi, this is Brennan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Jim Pinto with another episode of Metal Workshop. This is a mini episode that we're doing on the fly because we're going to talk about lyrics, and it kind of arose spontaneously. And Jim, since it was your idea, why don't you, get the ball rolling with an initial thought, and then we'll just move from there.
I am perpetually screwed whenever I'm on a podcast because I have to prologue so much to get to a point, and I don't want to do that today. I kind of want to tell people the backstory.
Okay. Well,
if I do that, then it sort of robs of the soul of what we're talking about. I don't know.
You could do it. Are you worried that people are going to be mad at you for your opinion on this subject? Or
no, not at all. Not at all. My opinion is rooted in my classical approach to writing.
Uh-huh.
So, of course, people that aren't writers are going to have a very different opinion about what metal lyrics should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing, and various other perspectives on the topic. But I just wanted to say that you and I talk a lot about metal when we're not recording.
Yes.
And we've been talking a lot the last 2 weeks when we really weren't talking that much at all beforehand.
Yep.
And now we're talking almost every day. So I don't think people realize how much homework we're doing before we record. We waste a lot of material on Facebook Messenger.
Yeah, but I forget so much of it is the problem. So we have all these conversations, and then it just vanishes into the ether. So And
I worry about repeating myself, so I never know what to say next because I don't want to say what we've said in a previous episode, confusing that with what we talked about when we weren't recording.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I wanted to do we have a topic that we were thinking of for the next episode. That's why I was thinking go with a topic, because that would prevent us from just covering the same ground over and over again.
And that's a great topic, but you've got to do your homework. I picked my 5.
Yeah, I'm close, but but also I want to so with that topic, I want to take my time. I want to pick the songs and then listen to them and then decide if I'm really satisfied that these are the songs that make the, you know what I mean? Because
I love making lists, so I made mine in 2 seconds.
Your list was already done before I even asked the question. It was. You were ready to go. You're like, I'm done. Let's go. Come on. And I'm like, wait. I don't want to commit to this list just yet. I might. It's a little premature,
So you sent me that link to Eternus Solitude or Solitude
Eternus, which, just for people who don't know, they're a doom metal band from the late 80s, early 90s. They're still active through the 90s, and I think they're a southern doom metal band, because if I recall, they come from someplace in the south. And if I'm correct, they kind of got their sound from the band Trouble.
They sound very similar.
Yeah.
Trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know it when I first listened to them because I didn't know about Trouble at the time, but later people told me that, and when I would listen to Trouble, I was like, yeah, I can see the connection. But
that tree on the cover of the album of Psalm 9, they use that tree on the cover of their album. I don't remember the name of the album.
No, and you pointed that out, and I don't think I've ever noticed that. So,
yeah,
but it was clear as day
tree,
once you pointed it out. I was like, oh yeah, that's the same tree for sure.
Yeah, they're certainly at least paying homage. If they're not, maybe they borrowed some members for all we know.
No, I think it's homage because I think Doom has a tendency to sort of just emulate what came before. There's another band called Count Raven, and the singer sounds exactly like Ozzy Osbourne, exactly. People always thought it was a Ozzy Osbourne cover band when I would show them the album, and that's just the style. Is just they would kind of reference the bands that came before.
So, did you listen to Witchbreed and Imaginos when I sent you those links? So
I didn't get to that yet.
Okay.
I was listening to a lot of the stuff you sent, but we just sent back 10 different links on either side. So I listened to the Tool one that you sent, and I listened to the Fates Warning one that you sent.
Yeah,
and there was a couple of others in there too.
So Witchbreed and Imaginos, in my opinion, are what modern Doom should sound like. I think one of the reasons I don't like the 80s Doom that you keep sending me is that the lyricism is just so corny in a lot of times. And I expect, when I hear the term Doom, I expect certain things. And then you talk about a band like Count Raven. I immediately know they're going to have ruffled sleeves and they're going to be emulating Meatloaf, right?
I don't know that they did.
I
don't want to libel them on the podcast. I don't know that they did. I think that they, I think that they might have actually, because again, I think I'm not sure if they were a Southern band, but like a lot of like Solitude Eternus, when you see these guys, yeah, they can wear like the velvet stuff for their pictures, but if you see them in their day clothing, they look like Leonard Skinner. You don't want to mess with these guys.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm not saying that they're not tough, but there's an image that immediately gets evoked, and you go in with the wrong preconceptions or biases. So it's very hard to listen to it clean.
Well, I don't think you're wrong. I think that that like doom metal and a lot of metal from that period was very, like I said in my message, very comic book rooted, very Lovecraft rooted. It was. I mean, again, I was a kid who was watching slasher movies with my friends late into the night. I was watching all kinds of trash and reading stuff that wasn't the greatest. And so that's sort of where the lyrics were, I think, for a lot of the metal bands. And some were better than others. The thing about Solitude that is interesting, though, is at the time, people that I knew thought of them as really great lyricists simply because of the word selection that they were using.
Right.
But you obviously had a lot of issues with their lyrics, which we had a very deep discussion on.
Right.
So I don't want to undercut any of that. So maybe you should get into that before we just go on like a ramble about Solitude Eternus.
Sure. I think that and we are definitely coming from a different point of view too, because while I grew up on comic books and bad fantasy novels as much as anybody, I guess, I grew up really quickly as a kid.
Okay.
And I didn't get to enjoy all the things that everybody else got to enjoy. I didn't do the hack and slash D&D in my teenage years. I moved around a lot. I didn't have a steady steady foundation of friends, and so you turn to music. Yeah. And when you encounter things like Rush and Triumph and Judas Priest early on, and Iron Maiden, because Steve Harris is such an amazing lyricist. I want to stop
you at Iron Maiden, actually, because a lot of people will say that Iron Maiden lyrics are corny. But I agree with you that
there's a lot of corny songs. I'll give you that.
But I agree with you. He's a really good lyricist, and I think sometimes not recognized for that fact because of the choice of subject matter.
Right.
What would you say separates someone like him from the cornier stuff, even if they're covering similar ground? Do you know what I mean? Like, even if they're still, sort of going with similar topics, what is it about Steve Harris's writing that you think separates him from those other bands?
One of them is point of view, right? Mm-hmm. When you're listening to Hallowed Be Thy Name, the entire song is from the point of view of the guy that's about to be hung or guillotined. I don't know, is he going to be hung or guillotined? Gallows. Yeah, he's going to be hung.
Yes, I think it's a gallows. Yeah. So, take me to the gallows pole is the line.
So the whole song is from his point of view, and everything is thematic and makes sense, and it's a perfect metal song, right? Then you get something like you were saying, 22 Acacia Avenue. That's a corny song. Yeah. It's not. In fact, it's pretty offensive by today's standards.
I don't think Steve Harris wrote the lyrics for that song.
Yeah, he may have not on that one. But then you get the song about Dune. To Tame a Land is about the novel Dune. I'm pretty sure that's Steve. And you listen to it, and it's all, again, it stays within the structure. And the most important thing it doesn't do is it doesn't tell you, it shows you. It shows you through evocative imagery and phrasing and cadence what is going on, as opposed to that one song, The Burning Sky, The Fading Sun. Beneath the Fading Sun. 16 lines to say I had a bad dream, right? And they're not good lines. They're kind of corny, and they don't finish. And at one point, he asks himself a question, and you don't know where you are in the lyrics. You keep getting pulled out of the moment.
Okay.
And the lyrics, I'm not a Pink Floyd fan. I've only heard one of their songs ever. I don't know how I've succeeded at doing that. But I know that people, when they sit down and listen to Pink Floyd, they like to do it in the dark with the headphones on, looking at that lyric sheet and feeling everything that Gilmore wants you to feel in those moments. And I think corny lyrics, or just, in this case, high school poetry, it pulls you out of the moment of what you're doing. There's so much good in that other Solitude Eternus song that you sent me instrumentally.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
The Seeds of Desolation or
Seeds of the Desolate, I think it was called.
Seeds of the Desolate, which is also strange.
Do you want to know what that song's supposedly about? As I don't know if you were able to figure. So
yeah, I didn't. So close to me. Go ahead.
So I was a member of the Solitude Eternus fan club when I was younger.
Right.
And I think I was actually pretty low. I think it was like number 26 or something. It was really low. But I used to get videos and all kinds of stuff. And I got a lyric book from them that where the guy who wrote the lyrics was explaining like each of the songs. And if I recall, for that one, it's about how it's about Cain and Abel basically, and how the evil that's in humanity began with that first act of murder. That was the explanation that he gave of the song, if I remember correctly.
Right.
Which I don't, whenever I listen to it now, I look for that. I kind of find it hard to really get that from it. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah. And I think a lot of what he's spending too many words. Sometimes he's spending too many words to say a thing. Yep. And then at other times he's not saying much. He's trying to say a lot with very few words.
Yep.
And I don't know if he's trying to set a mood or if he's trying to explain an action to me.
Well,
and I get lost in those moments, and I ask myself, if this is really doom metal, shouldn't you just be painting really doom-like imagery?
I think that with them, so I guess the defense of Solitude's lyrics would be something like they're more about painting a feeling or an atmosphere. Do you know what I mean? Like just trying to create a sense of like what it feels like walking outside when it's raining or something. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of songs that kind of have that vibe to them. Right. And I also think that they're deliberately sort of spiritual. They have a lot of Christian themes in their lyrics, and they have a lot of religious language in their lyrics. And I grew up in a really religious household as a kid.
Sure.
So I remember what connected me to that band's lyrics wasn't so much understanding them, because honestly their lyrics are kind of hard to understand, but just because they're sort of, the phrasing is sometimes very unusual, I think, and and like we were saying, the word selection it's sort of awkward at times. But what connected me to them was the spiritual aspect and stuff that was like immediately biblical or recognizable to me as a spiritual experience of some kind. So having it not be totally clear what's going on and where you are was sort of helpful in that sense. Right. Again, that was just how I connected to it as a younger person. That was sort of the thing that resonated with me with that band. But also, I think they have the misfortune of, it's the time that they came out. You got to understand, this was like the height of like all the Anne Rice stuff and all the 90s horror that was like really like everything was sort of super elaborate and Baroque back then. I don't know if you remember like the way that like a lot of the books sounded and a lot of the just everything was sort of ornate, and I think a lot of their lyrics, they were trying to be ornate. Do you know what I mean? And
I think you bring up a really great metaphor there. You remember when Vampire the Masquerade came out?
Yeah, oh yeah. I remember seeing it on the bus the first day that, well, not the first day it became available, but very early on I remember seeing it on the bus to school.
Even when the writing wasn't good in that core book, the entire product was evocative.
Yeah.
When you were done, you felt something about that book. And it's a long read in comparison to a song, but I'm getting somewhere. You knew how to play that game. You knew what you wanted to do with that game. You had an idea in your mind, and it may not match anybody else's idea of how to run that game, right? Because D&D, everybody reads D&D, they know exactly what to do with it. But you read Vampire, and it conjures up things, and it gets you excited, even when the writing is bad. Then you read a source book written by a freelancer who's never worked at a game company before, who just wants to get their ideas on the page. And you're forced to swim through page after page after page of bad exposition, right? And that's sort of the difference, I think, between expectation and execution. You've set me up, metal sets me up to believe that it's smarter than other kinds of music. Right?
Yep.
And that's Vampire the Masquerade. And then I approach a certain band like, I don't know. I think Geezer writes good stuff, so I can't use Black Sabbath as an example. But say a lot of the stupider stuff by Megadeth early on, like The Mechanic or the song 502 about getting a speeding ticket. You read lyrics like that. It's a great song, but those lyrics, I mean, they don't even need to be there.
I kind of like the lyrics in 502 though. It's like it matches what's going on. You know what I mean? Like it matches the sound of the song. You know?
Absolutely, it does not match the title of a band called Megadeth, right?
No, but
and there's the disconnect.
Okay. Well, I think
Solitude Eternus sounds like they're going to be a really smart band. They've got a Latin name, right? And then you get in there, and some of the word compositions are clumsy, and I don't want to bash on them all day because I've only heard a couple of songs that you sent me.
I'll take the
There's
position
all
of
kinds of bands
defending
I can
them,
pick
so it's not like purely an attack. So I think the defense would be that they're still clearly well read. Do you know what I mean? Like they're obviously drawing on Lovecraft, and they're using a lot of big words or a lot of obscure words, and it's just it lacks a certain refinement, maybe, right? Like it's this isn't lyrical content put out by a grad student. This is lyrical content put out by somebody who reads a lot of Lovecraft, reads a lot of horror, and is maybe emulating some of that phrasing and that style. And so for me as a kid, I wasn't a kid, I was a teenager, but you know, I really adored their lyrics. As an adult, you know, like with a lot of metal, when I go back and look at it, I can sort of see the rough edges on it.
Yeah,
I can see some of the critiques that you're making. But at the same time, I feel like metal has never been. It doesn't always have to be smart metal, right? Like there's a lot of metal that's hokey and goofy, but charming. And so like
Anthrax, anything by Anthrax.
Well, I could never get into Anthrax, and it's not because they're a bad band. It's not because the lyrics. I just something about the way they write songs. I just never could get into them.
I know, I get it. I was making fun because they are an example of a band I like with dumb lyrics.
Oh, well, right? What about King Diamond? King Diamond has really hokey lyrics, right? Like he writes horror movies to metal music. It's not like gonna like it's hokey in that you know it's not grad school level, right? It's not, but I really like the stuff that he does. I really like that there's a story. I like the and again, English isn't his first language, so kind of like with Candlemass, you have to account for that when you're evaluating the lyrics. So I'd say for somebody whose first language is in English, he does quite well. But he's kind of he's goofy at times, and he's got a song called No Presents for Christmas that's basically a Christmas song, and he's got he's got humor in there, and it's not striving to be super serious all the time.
So I'm going to say something absolutely Philistine, and I'm going to lose my metal badge.
Go ahead.
I don't like King Diamond's voice, so I think his lyrics match his voice because he's kind of a cartoon to me.
Yeah.
So it's okay. He's writing to his style, and one of the things that's going wrong with Solitude Eternus is he's singing at this really shrill pitch that doesn't change, and the band is playing in these doom riffs that are sometimes really good, and that guitar player is really talented, and then the lyrics don't match anything else anybody is doing. Okay. So it's not a good marriage.
See, I would disagree with all that.
I'm sure you would. I'm being much more picky than you are about it, and you don't need to defend them every time.
No. I'm just saying. I think I have an honest disagreement with you about how well those things go together.
Okay.
So for me, when I like, I totally understand your criticism of the lyrics because I can see everything that you're pointing at. Do you know what I mean? I can see all the I can see it. But when I hear that voice over that guitar, and the lyrical content, it all kind of matches to me. And I don't. And again, I think it might come down to sort of. I feel like I know what they're going for, if that makes sense. Like I feel like I was in the same mental state as they were when they were writing it, and so it connected with me.
And that's why it connects with a lot of people, probably, right? Everybody finds their audience and their niche. Yeah. They're not mine.
No, this is a band that I was very reluctant to share with you because I knew it would not go over well. But what I like is I like getting
6 or 7 of their songs now.
But I like getting your honest opinion on these things.
Yeah.
And so, but I wanted to go back to King Diamond because for number one, I don't think a lot of people would fault you for that because King Diamond like I got into King Diamond early, and that's why I was able to enjoy King Diamond. Do you know what I mean? If I had gotten into King Diamond 5 years later, I think I would have had a harder time because his voice, it's sort of like Bob Dylan. Like, just not everybody can get into this guy's voice. Do you know what I mean? It's like he's taking some of the stuff that like Halford does, but bringing it into like Gremlin territory. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like really exaggerated the way that he sings, and he has basically like two voices that he uses, and then some characters that he'll tend to speak in the voice of, or sing in the voice of.
And not a lot of metal lyricists would do that. Not a lot of metal singers would do that. Excuse me, where they would have different characters or bring in different voices. You usually use the skills of your voice to make the people feel that those things are taking place instead of bringing in a character.
Well, he's doing musicals basically. He's basically it was my cup of tea because I was a horror fan and I was like a bad horror movie fan. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's every one of his albums is like it's a different kind of horror movie. Like like Abigail might be sort of a more high level horror movie, like more of like like Hammer Studio maybe,
Right.
Not high level, but that, higher than say an album like what was it called? The Eye, which to me felt like The Mark of the Devil, like one of these more exploitative movies about witchcraft during the Middle Ages. So, but with King Diamond, I think that the lyrics, like I was saying, they're definitely hokey and comical, but it still works for me. But I guess it's because of what you were saying, which is his voice is comic and the contents kind of match it. Like he's comic.
Yeah.
Like what would be he's got sort of like a horror comedy vibe. Do you know what I mean? It's like an Evil Dead or Gremlins or any of these horror movies that also have an element of humor to them. That's kind of what a King Diamond album feels like.
I don't think Twisted Sister is metal. They're a rock band, but Stay Hungry tried to be as metal as it could. Their big album.
Well,
I think Dee Snider. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say I think we should talk about whether Twisted Sister is metal because I don't know if you ever saw that documentary on them that was on Netflix.
I did. I watched the whole thing.
What did you think of that documentary?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Yeah, but they even say that they're a rock band.
Yeah, no, it was a really good documentary. But I thought it was interesting that Scott Ian was maintaining. I think he was the one who said they were a metal band, right? Because he had seen them performing locally and in the clubs. I guess they played their music really fast or something, and so that was. I guess the story is that there were a lot of that some thrash bands were influenced by Twisted Sister from seeing them play in the clubs, and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying right. I'm agreeing.
Yeah. And so I guess the question is, number one, do you believe that that's the case? Do you think that they sounded more like metal in the clubs? And if so, do they deserve credit for, having like one foot in metal in that way?
I think they sounded more punk in the clubs. And that thrash also gets its roots from punk.
Yep.
So I can see where Ian's coming from. I just don't see anything metal about them. I see it as really hard rock.
Yep.
And we didn't have a lot of choices when that album came out, so every metalhead was buying it and enjoying it. I mean, there were 50 albums at that point in metal in 1983 or whatever it was. I think it was 83. So there weren't a lot of choices. I think it gets glummed in because it gets godfathered in now, but I don't think that they're metal. No.
Okay. Yeah,
I don't think I would have made that distinction at 13. I didn't care. I was listening to that thing over and over again. The point I was going to make about Twisted Sister is that Dee Snider uses words he doesn't understand, and it makes some of the songs sound.
Can you give an example? Because I know Twisted Sister from their songs on the radio, and Dee Snider is a colorful personality who I find very charismatic, but I don't know their lyrics very well. So
I'd have to go look up a song.
Mm-hmm.
Right now.
Well, let me ask you the nature of it. Is he selecting words that you think just aren't in his vocabulary, or words that he just isn't thinking about them when he uses them? Like he's using them the wrong way?
Using words that are in his vocabulary and that he's always used wrong. Because he
Okay.
did the same thing in the movie that he directed.
Mhm.
He would use words wrong.
Okay. I mean, people do that. That is like there are certain like there are even words that have a certain kind of currency being used incorrectly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty generous with that. If as long as I know what the person means, I'm okay with it. If it's unclear to me what they're trying to say, then I might get annoyed.
Some of the some of the lyrics in the song "Stay Hungry" are wrong, and in the song "The Price." And I really like the song "The Price," but I'll listen to it and I just you're not using that word right there. But then he'll do a song like Captain Howdy and Street Justice, and it doesn't matter because those songs are telling a story, and he does it really well.
Okay.
But so with Twisted Sister, you're getting a little bit of the we're not taking this too seriously vibe as well, and I think because they're so commercially such a joke aesthetically, right? They didn't even take them so seriously with all the makeup and the giant hair and whatnot. I think that it's okay. Maybe they're the beginning of glam that we were talking about. Maybe they opened the door for Motley Crue. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. But we're getting off the topic of lyrics.
That's okay. Well, we're still kind of on the topic of lyrics because you were talking about how ridiculous some of the words were, and so I think a lot of that does come down to how serious minded you are as a consumer of this stuff. And
so, can we agree that Rain and Blood is the quintessential thrash metal album or speed metal album, depending on how you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's definitely a contender if it isn't. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah. It's important. It's a big album. It's important. It's really good. There's lots of songs in there where he's just listing as many offensive words as he possibly can to evoke. And because of the way he sings it, you take it a little more seriously than you would if he were singing it the way King Diamond sings it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, King Diamond sings things. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah. And then you get to a song like Raining Blood, which is absolutely the perfect soundtrack to the end of the world, right? And it has all of that dark biblical imagery going on in it. It's got revelations going on in it. It's got God destroying the world with fire imagery going on with it. And it's just so well done from beginning to end that you hear a song like that and you just want everything to be that good. I think maybe that's where I come from, and that makes it difficult for me to look at lyrics and from another band and go, oh, what were you thinking with that? I mean, how many times are they going to talk about their penis in an AC/DC song?
But
right?
I want AC/DC to talk about their penis. Like I think that they do it well. Do you know what I mean? Like
they do. But my favorite songs by them are Hell's Bells, If You Want Blood, right? Those are much better songs than Shoot to Thrill.
Well, are we talking about all of AC/DC, or are we going to limit ourselves to like the Bon Scott? Because I feel like there is a difference too in the.
If You Want Blood is Bon Scott.
I'm sorry.
If You Want Blood was Bon Scott.
No, but I'm saying, are we thinking more about Bon Scott lyrics now, or are we thinking about all of AC/DC's lyrics?
All of AC/DC.
Okay.
Because I mean, even TNT, as good of a song as that is, it's about hooking up with women in small towns, right? I mean, that's all that they sing about. And so after
what about Dirty Deeds? Where does Dirty Deeds fit into?
That's such a funny song. It's not even trying to take itself seriously.
But the wit is razor sharp, isn't it? I mean,
it is.
Yeah,
it is.
So you don't get that razor sharp wit if you're not willing to be a little bit silly and delve into these things sometimes, right?
Sure, but I'm not expecting Oscar Wilde out of metal, right?
No.
I want John Milton in my metal. I don't want Oscar Wilde.
I want some Wilde too, though. Like I want a little bit of I want some impishness in my music, and I also want some like we were talking about Megadeth, and their lyrics can kind of really span the full spectrum of great to bad, as you're sort of framing it here. And but like I kind of like that about them. Like Dave Mustaine, I always think of him as Starscream from the Transformers. Do you know what I mean? He's got this personality that's really kind of punk and just I don't know, just like somebody who got cut really bad as a kid and never got over it. Like something, you know what I mean? Just like there's just
what a great metaphor.
Well, you know what I mean, though. There's like it's like he's like the He's like what was that movie, Better Off Dead? Do you remember the Paperboy from Better Off Dead? He's like the Paperboy from Better Off Dead, you know? But I like his childishness, and so I kind of want to have that in some of my metal. I think the stuff that turns me off more in heavy metal is when you have, like, I don't know, I remember there were a lot of death doom bands that I would listen to that took themselves so seriously that it just drained all of the like all of the spirit of the music. It was just like a funeral mass. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'd rather have like a little spark of humor in there and some flawed material than something that's like just too pristine and dark.
We're getting close to what we were talking about last episode with how many ballad songs are you allowed on an album before you're not metal anymore, right? Yeah. How many comical songs are you allowed before? Because Warrant's Cherry Pie might be the stupidest thing ever written. Well, can we agree to that?
No, well, okay, well, so anything in that category isn't what I'm talking about. Like,
no, I know you're not. I'm using that as that metaphor here. Help me out.
No, so I see what you're saying.
That's a really stupid song, right?
That's a tremendously stupid song.
And that's the one they started with. So if that's the one out the gate, how much dumber is this band going to get? And that's the fear going into metal. Let's bring it back to metal. Yep. If the first song off the album that we release is a ballad or a corny song, what are we setting up for your expectations for the rest of that album? Do you follow?
No, I'll explain the difference. So there's so it's not about the humor content or even the content itself with Cherry Pie. The difference between Cherry Pie and like really ridiculous comedic metal is the intent going in. Like Warrant is just there to party, right? Warrant, they don't care about playing instruments or being in a band or defending metal. They care about getting laid. Like, I think we can agree on that, right? Like, that is that is clearly the motive behind Warrant. And I know that the singer's passed away, and I don't want to be too harsh on them.
Because, he did? I didn't know that.
Yeah, the singer died a few years ago. So I don't want to pick on him. We'll pick on Poison, because Poison's maybe, they're all still alive. So
I get these two bands confused. You're right. Yeah.
Poison. So Poison, they're all there to party, right? And so the difference between them and, say, a band like Helloween, right? Helloween is as corny as it gets. Like, you cannot get more corny metal, I think, than Helloween.
His voice, my God, his voice. Go on.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's like it's even worse than King Diamond, right? Like some people can maybe handle a little King Diamond, but no Helloween.
Right.
But they're still metal. Do you know what I mean? Even if you don't like Helloween, you can. It's hard to say, well, that's hard rock. Do you know what I mean? Or and so I feel like the difference really is that I still get the sense with Helloween, and I'm not the biggest Helloween fan, though I can appreciate them on a certain level. I think that I get the impression that they're devoted to metal and that they're devoted to the endeavor itself, whether it's classified as metal or something else.
Right.
They're there for the music, and they're there, even though the content's corny, they believe in that content. I don't think Warrant believes in its content. I don't think Poison believes in its content.
Right, and I'm not defending. I'm just using Warrant and Poison as really bad metaphors to explain that when you're approaching a new album or a new band, if you pick up Triumph Allied Forces and you think that's what Triumph sounds like, you're in for a big surprise when Sport of Kings comes out or when Never Surrender comes out, because they kept changing what they sound like and they kept changing what they were writing about. Right? They have a song, Lay It on the Line, which is about him giving a girl a choice. You got to tell me how you feel about me, which is as far removed from the song Never Surrender, which is about the complexities of living in the modern world. Those songs are so far removed from one another that if they appeared on the same album and the first song you heard was about trying to score with a chick, you would think, what is this band about? Why are the other 9 songs on this album
and so are you saying really this is complex? A good or a bad thing that this band does this? Or
I'm not saying it's either good or bad. I'm saying you as a consumer, you're set up for an expectation when you pick up. Let's say you bought a K-Tel compilation of metal, and the first song off the album is Warrant's Cherry Pie.
Oh, I'd be furious.
the end of the album is Judas Priest Beyond the Realms of Death, you never get to Judas Priest Beyond the Realms of Death because you stopped listening on track 1.
Yeah. Well, that would be. I mean, I hate to use this word because but like that would be like offensive. Do you know what I mean? Like
yes,
that would.
Absolutely, that would be offensive.
Because it's so. It's almost like whoever made that album is doing it on purpose to provoke a reaction.
But the expectation upon hearing a song from an album, if the first song you heard off of Reign of Blood was the song about not sleeping with dead bodies, eating dead bodies, necrophage or whatever it's called, I forget what it's called. If that was the first song you heard off the album, you would think, wow, what a silly, stupid band this is. But that's not the first song you heard off of Reign of Blood. The first song you heard was either Angel of Death or
Necrophobic you're thinking of? Necrophobic? I just
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
There's one about eating a dead body. There's one about being a serial killer. There's one about the electric chair.
I mean, I gotta say, there's a good long-standing tradition of metal bands writing about, doing all kinds of terrible things with corpses. So I think...
Yeah, I know, but that one is especially stupid. Yeah. That Slayer song about there's one about being buried alive and so on.
But I feel like when bands tackle that genre of lyric, they generally do it in almost from a stupid point of view. Do you know what I mean? Like stupid angle. I
think you're just completely constantly missing my point. I know the song is stupid. I'm saying if that's the first song you heard off that album, wouldn't it set up an expectation that these guys are going to be dumb?
Yeah, it would set. I would expect them to sound like one of the bands that like only writes about ripping up dead bodies and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what I would expect.
Your opinion about Halloween is pretty bad, right? You don't think they make good music. If they had
okay. Well, let me explain.
On their album, you would never have found it because you couldn't get past the first song.
So my opinion of Halloween. In terms of, I mean, as musicians go, I think they're fine, right? Like, I think the performative aspect of the band is fine. I always had a little bit of trouble taking them seriously. And I know people that really like them, though, and so I spent many hours in a car listening to them, even though I wouldn't have done it myself if I had been given the choice. And over time, they grew on me. So I can respect what Halloween does, but they're not, like, I wouldn't... I would reluctantly put them on to listen to them.
They only have 2 good songs, and I could have told you what those 2 were, and it would have saved you a lot of pain. But yeah, they're a silly band.
Well,
but if they
where does Dr. Steen fit into all this?
Oh God, that's so bad. Dr. Steen makes funny creatures. That's the line. They crawl into the night. I don't remember the exact lyric, but
I kind of admired the boldness. Like it was so on the nose. Do you know what I mean? Like I kind of respected that they were just like, no, this is what we're about. You know what I mean? This is like, I watched a lot of Hammer or a lot of Universal horror movies growing up.
But then they did the song Keeper of the Seven Seas Part 2, which is this 18-minute epic that they clearly wanted to be in realm with bands like Dream Theater and Queen and these bands that write really long songs. Inagata Vita by Iron Butterfly, that kind of epic.
Yeah.
And that's the only song on that album like that has any of that kind of maturity.
But that's kind of interesting, isn't it? That there's like, that shows range. That shows, yes, we can write about Dr. Steen, but we can also do this. Do you know what I mean?
We can also write about going and finding these keys.
It's sort of like you set the expectations so low that you're floored when you get to, right. I don't know. I think number one, I'm probably less invested in lyrics than you are. I think you take the lyrics very seriously.
I do.
And I'll admit, I like good lyrics, and once they sink in, I'll start thinking about them and stuff. But I always came at music like this from the perspective of a guitar player, and guitar players generally, I think, aren't as they're not as concerned with the lyrical content often. They'll complain if they think the lyrics really suck. Do you know what I mean? But I'll listen to bands whose singers I cannot stand if I really like the guitar.
Right.
And so, good lyrics are just a bonus if they're present. But I'll settle for just a good voice, and I think too, you have a very literary approach to lyrics too. So I think that's the other thing is your expectations are very high when it comes to lyrics.
Right.
But I guess the question is that representative of most heavy metal fans? Because I feel like heavy metal fans. So I meet a lot of heavy metal fans who have viewpoints like yours, but I also meet a lot of heavy metal fans who are sort of more like the comic book guys. Do you know what I mean? Who aren't as worried about a deep analysis of the song structure or the lyrics, and more interested in maybe the coolness factor of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I can off the top of my head, I can think of a couple of bands that people get really excited about because they think the lyrics are deep and they're not. And that's
a whole other topic, really, I would say.
Yeah.
But what bands would you list in that realm?
Well, they're not really metal, but I know everybody likes them. Coheed and Cambria. He couldn't write dumber lyrics if he tried.
Were they the guys from Caius, Coheed and Cambria, or am I? No, I'm confusing them with Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah. I like Queens of the Stone Age. I like his lyrics, but he's not trying to be anything other than a dirty white trash band from the Victorville Desert.
Wasn't Coheed and Cambria? They were like a ridiculous band, right? Or am I mistaken?
No. They're an indie. They're probably, I think they're considered nu metal. I don't know if they're actually nu metal. They're a little progressive, but he has a really high pitched voice, and he's been trying to translate this comic book idea into lyrics for the last 6 albums.
Okay.
So all these songs are supposed to reveal the details of this great war that's been going on in the comic book.
Mm-hmm.
But I listen to it and I just think, these are all bad songs. These are all bad lyrics. You've got one song I can even put up with. I'm not seeing what your fans are seeing. And it's clearly a generational thing. People that really like comic books grok to this because it's talking directly at them.
Yeah, and I don't read comics, actually. So comics are something that I don't speak the comic language. But I watched a lot of schlocky horror movies, and so I speak that language. But, okay, so for depth, what makes metal lyrics deep then? If since we're on the topic, like, what would you say is properly deep?
Anything by Rush, right? Before a certain age. Everything Rush, but Rush is.
I'm not a huge Rush person, so I mean I believe you because I've heard Rush and they definitely they just come across as very intelligent,
right?
So I assume that their lyrics are probably deep, but I don't know the material all that well.
So that's really the problem that I'm starting with, because that was my first. No, they're not metal, but that was my first out of. And Kansas too. Those were the 2 bands that I listened to getting out of classical music and not listening to Kiss anymore.
Okay.
Because Kiss is what everybody started on. You can't help it.
For you old timers maybe, but
not that much older than you. But then I found Judas Priest. I found Iron Maiden. I found Triumph. I found even Crocus isn't. Well, they're not that smart, but they were pretty good at the time for a teenager to grok. I think. Now that I listen to Fates Warning a lot, that's my number 1 band, or I listen to Opeth, or I listen to Tool, I expect bands to be doing this. And I've been trying to get to this point all episode, and here's my segue. There's that song, Eternal Rains Will Come, by Opeth. I made you listen to. Did you listen to it? It's the one with the opening organ?
Yes, yeah, but I didn't just listen to it 5 minutes ago, so you might have to refresh my memory.
So the whole song is just about his breakup, his divorce from his wife. But he uses the flood, Noah's flood, as the metaphor for the divide between them.
Mm-hmm.
And it is such a beautifully composed song from beginning to end. And the lyrics, they just work. And he's writing to his voice, and he's writing to the style of the song. And that's one of the things that makes Maynard so good at what he does, Maynard from Tool. And that's what makes a lot... even the guys from Gojira are doing this, because they are writing to the composition of the song. They're not just trying to cram some lyrics in that they thought of on the bus without any melody. And that's a lot of these problems with 4/4 rock. And I mean, Foo Fighters is a perfect example of the dumbest lyrics in the world, because they have nothing to do with anything. He's just throwing words together that sound good and that rhyme. He's even admitted this, that none of his songs are about anything.
There are a lot. Yeah, there are a lot of singers that will. The guy from Faith No More kind of said something like that about his lyrics.
Mike Patton.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went to high school with Mike.
Well, what he said though was a little more interesting. He said that he is more concerned about the sound than the meaning, which I can appreciate that.
Yeah. And if that's what your band does, that's great. I'm not going to ever bitch about that if your whole point. But then you get Red Hot Chili Peppers. The songs don't have any meaning, and the lyricism is awful, and the singing is the same on every single song. I get so sick of that on every single song. It's okay. Didn't I hear this song 3 years ago on the radio? So I can't tell them apart.
So what you just said, number one, I agree with you on Maynard because I remember the lyrics for Tool, and they were quite good. I'm not as familiar with Opeth, but I did hear that song, and what you just explained to me about it, it definitely sounds like a very well-crafted song to me. Like that. Yeah. That's a very good argument for a well-made song. But I think I'm after something slightly different than you when I listen to lyrics. Absolutely. So and I think an interesting point of sort of separation between us is maybe the bands just prior to our interest in metal. Yours was Rush. Mine was stuff like Queen and the Doors. And Queen is kind of an interesting thing to pair against Rush because they're in a similar genre. They're both sort of started as prog bands, right? But Queen is a little bit more ridiculous, and the quality varies tremendously. They sort of try everything, especially early on, and they can get very commercial as well. Which Rush never felt like a terribly commercial band to me. No. So I think that might be part of it. Is I'm a little more like 4/4. I'm fine with. Do you know what I mean? Like 4/4. I'm fine with Common Time, and I'm fine with bands that just fit things into the lyrics that way. Right. Not that Queen did a lot of they did a lot of stuff that was in terms of type signature that was interesting, and in terms of music that was interesting. But their lyrics could definitely be kind of silly sometimes. So I don't know. I wonder if because Rush, when I think of Rush and when I think of Rush fans, I think of like engineers, and I think of people with degrees in literature, just people that are just generally have brains. Do you know what I mean? It's just and even the band, like, isn't the drummer like a scientist or something? Am I mistaken about that? Is that just some sort of internet rumor?
He's not a scientist. He's just really well read.
Okay. That's these things tend to explode and get exaggerated. But
now, the lead singer for Bad Religion has a doctorate in biology from Cornell, and he was working on his degree the entire time that they were making music. So his lyrics have always been highfalutin. I mean, phylogenetically appears in one of my favorite Bad Religion songs. Okay. So who else would use the word phylogenetically in a song?
Well, it's the kind of, if another band used it, it would be because they found it in a thesaurus or in a medical dictionary. There's a lot of bands that do stuff like that. I that's how we used to look for band names. Do you know what I mean? I remember my first doom metal band. What was the name? Inhabitants of Pandemonium. We didn't. You just found it as a synonym for hell. Do you know what I mean?
So funny. But this is unrelated to lyrics, but I should tell this story. When I was 13, I sat down and made a logo by hand for a band named Vex, VEXX. That was going to be my metal band, and then it had a big giant axe on the V on one side, and it had a ball and chain on the other side of the V.
What was the name again?
Vex, VEXX. Vex.
That's actually a really cool name, I would say. Yeah. That's. I mean, I wouldn't have thought in high school. I had, and I didn't come up with the names. Inhabitants of Pandemonium, and then Israfel became our final name. And
I actually sat down and I drew out our band's first 6 albums.
You didn't even have a band yet, right? You just did constructed.
I did the covers. I named all the songs, and I swear to God, I'm not making this up. At one point, I actually said, okay, this is going to be our sellout album. This is going to be the one that nobody likes, and this is the one where we make our comeback.
Okay, yeah.
I honestly sat down and did that, and I named the songs in the way that bands would name them based on their sellout album, based on the experimental one after the sellout that nobody likes. And I was 13, and I'm sitting there doing this in my bedroom. I spent a couple days doing it.
I mean, I think everybody has that kind of dream. Do you know what I mean? Like
I don't know if they have a dream of the Sellout album.
No. I mean, they imagine having a band that makes it, but you just took it to the level of like really charting out where this was going to go. Even when I was in a band, like I would just. It was hard enough trying to make songs, let alone anticipating our fourth album. Yeah. Not that we ever got an album. We played locally. Did I ever tell you the gefilte fish story?
No.
Don't?
No, I said no. Go ahead.
I won't if you don't want me to. But
it already sounds bad, which is a good way to start any story. So in the band that I was in, we were like the only doom death metal band at all in our area. All the other bands were sort of more alternative style bands, or just stuff that was a little bit more popular. And so when we went to a show, there would always be like 5 or 6 kids that were like the death metal kids that wanted to mosh, that were really into us, but nobody else liked us. And all the other bands, I don't think really particularly liked us. And so my singer, he was really theatrical. He was into Haunted Garage. He was into Dio. He was into, anything that sort of just had that bravado to it and that sort of staginess to it. And he bought a bunch of animal intestines, like tripe or something. He put it in a Ziploc bag, and he put Caro syrup and food coloring in the bag, and then he taped it to his belly. And he said, I'm going to cut my stomach open, I'm going to pull out the guts, and then I'm going to eat a brain. And he said, you know what I'm going to use for the brain? He was Jewish, and so he decided to use gefilte fish. And because have you ever seen gefilte fish? Yeah.
So it looks kind of like brain, right? However, this gefilte fish that we got had been stewing in the hot sun in the car for hours. And, so when he opened the top to take it out, the whole room just flooded with the odor. And not only that, but he was borrowing a mic from another band, and he's chomping into this gefilte fish on stage, and the juices are getting all over the mic, and the guts are spilled the room totally cleared out, and I still hear complaints to this day from people about who are upset about the mic being ruined. But I was kind of proud. I was kind of happy that we sort of made an impression like that.
Please tell me this was on the last song and not the first song.
I don't know where we were on our. I mean, we had like 4 songs maybe that we played that night. I don't know where. I think we played Through the Stench. I think it was fairly early on, because it wasn't like our sense of timing with all this was brilliant. You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
We toned it down. By the next show, he was just going out on stage with like a single red rose, and it was a little bit more theatrical, but not as grotesque and stinky. But yeah, so that's the gefilte fish story. But yeah, so I don't know. I think I that's kind of where I'm coming from, though. If you can imagine, like that's sort of probably more in the schlock realm of metal. But there was a degree of pretension. He came out on the stage with a rose, right? That's kind of a we were sort of aspiring to loftier things.
If you want some editing advice, just end this at the end of that gefilte fish story. There's no topping that. We can sign off now.
We can go now. All right. I think maybe that's where we'll leave it, is with the gefilte fish. I don't know. Is there anything you want to add before we go?
Not after that.
Okay.
You don't follow that up.
All right. Yeah. I don't think I named any names, so I think it's all good. Hopefully people won't be mad at me for bringing up that story. But yeah. So anyways, this was a special edition. This is just a mere 53 minutes. Compared to our albums are all like Iron Maiden songs. They're not our albums, our podcast episodes. They just kind of go on and on. All right, so we'll leave it here, and we'll be back on with a proper episode that's more complete, and we'll deal with the topic. And I think, is that going to be the sad song episode? Is that what we're going with?
If you get your shit together,
I'll get my shit together. I once I get going on it, it'll be good. I just need to sit down and think a little bit. So all right. So we'll be back on, and we will talk to you later.